FileZilla Pro Series. These tutorials are aimed at illustrating how to best use FileZilla Pro, FileZilla flagship product. This video collects all FileZilla Pro tutorials to learn how to use FileZilla Pro. In this tutorial, you will learn how to transfer files using FTP with FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. While we use FTP, the instructions also work with all the other supported protocols. To learn how to configure connections with other protocols, watch the other tutorials you find in the video description. Launch FileZilla or FileZilla Pro. Select the connection you want to use. Wait until the connection is completed. On the left side, you see your local files. You can navigate to any directory in your local file system. On the right side, you see the files and directories on the remote server. Now you are ready to upload files to the remote side. To transfer file, you can simply double-click the file name in the file list. You can also right-click in the file name and select Upload to transfer files to the current remote directory. If you need to transfer several files, just select them. Right-click and choose Upload. You can also use the transfer queue to transfer several files and directories. First, add directories and files to the transfer queue. Then, just start the queue processing to have your files uploaded. To transfer files from the remote side, you proceed the same way. First, create a new local directory to store your files. To download one file only, just double-click it. Select and right-click to download several files. The transfer queue also works for file and directory download. Then just start the queue processing to have your files uploaded. In this video, you learned how to upload and download files using FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. In this tutorial, you will learn how to securely use FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. While we use FTP, the instructions also work with all the other supported protocols. To learn how to configure connections with other protocols, watch the other tutorials you find in the video description. Launch FileZilla or FileZilla Pro. In FileZilla and FileZilla Pro, almost all protocols require a password. By default, FileZilla stores passwords together with other site information, like the user or host name. If password storing is disabled, FileZilla will ask you to enter the password every time you connect. This is recommended when using FileZilla from a public computer or someone else's computer you cannot guarantee won't be compromised in the future. For an additional level of protection, users can enable a master password. That is a password to encrypt all passwords with. Be aware that if you lose the master password, it will not be possible to restore any stored password. When connecting, FileZilla asks for the master password. FileZilla does not require you to rewrite the master password at every connection. You can disable the master password by choosing the other options. When disabling the master password, you have the option to restore the passwords by entering the master password, or in case you lost the master password, you can delete all passwords. In this case, you have to re-enter all the passwords again via Site Manager. Again, if you're using FileZilla from a public computer, it is important to remove all stored sensitive information. This includes any data entered in the Quick Connect box, connection data from the last used server, any site you created in the Site Manager, and finally, any transfer queue information. In this video, you learned how to manage FileZilla and FileZilla Pro securely. In this tutorial, you will learn how to search files with FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. While we use FTP, the instructions also work with all the other supported protocols. To learn how to configure connections with other protocols, watch the other tutorials you find in the video description. Launch FileZilla or FileZilla Pro. Select the connection you want to use. Wait until the connection is completed. Open the Search dialog to search your files, either locally or remotely. FileZilla searches under the current selected directory and its subdirectories. Choose how to apply the search conditions. Search conditions allow you to locate files that meet specified criteria for file name, size, path, and last modification date. FileZilla allows you to combine several search conditions. Use the conditions to narrow your search. FileZilla searches files and directories. Here we are only interested on searching for files. Click Search to start the search. FileZilla will run the search and show the results. Once you find the desired file, you can download it or do what you need to. FileZilla can recreate the directory structure if you want, or simply transfer the files to the target directory. There is an option to start the download immediately, or to add the files to the queue to have them transferred later. You can also search within the current directory by typing the file name. As you type, FileZilla selects the first file starting with the typed letters. Type the letter B, now type the letter R. FileZilla first selects the file starting with B, and then the first file starting with BR. This type of search is applied within the current listed files. If you just want to find files with a given name, open the Quick Search box, pressing Ctrl F. If you are on Mac, press Command F instead. Enter the text you want to search. FileZilla will show only the files containing the search text. Use Quick Search options to modify the way FileZilla does the search. For example, you can invert the search. The result will hide all the files containing the search text. In this video, you learned how to search with FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. In this video, we'll teach you how to configure FTP file transfer types with FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. In this tutorial, you will learn how to configure FTP transfer types with FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. Launch FileZilla or FileZilla Pro. FTP transfer can be of two types, ASCII or binary. ASCII type is used to transfer text files. The format of text files vary on different platforms, and a conversion between the client and the server may be necessary. With the ASCII type, the text file is correctly converted. With the binary type, the files are transferred without conversion. This type is suitable to transfer images or data files. The Auto option enables automatic detection of the most appropriate transfer type for a file. That is, it will use the ASCII type for text files and binary type for every other type of file. You can also configure which file types have to be managed as text files. To add a new file extension, enter the file extension without the dot, then click Add. Now files with that extension will be managed as text files, and as such transferred using the ASCII transfer type. By selecting this option, files without extension will be managed as text files and transferred as ASCII transfer type. Also with this option, files starting with a dot will be managed as text files. The transfer type can also be modified while your connection is active. In the Transfer Type menu, you can choose Automatic, ASCII, or Binary transfer types. These options are also available from the Transfer Type icon in the status bar. For a more detailed description of FTP transfer type, visit the link you find in the description of this video. In this video, you learned how to configure transfer types with FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. In this tutorial, you will learn how to use the transfer queue with FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. While we use FTP, the instructions also work with all the other supported protocols. To learn how to configure connections with other protocols, watch the other tutorials you find in the video description. Launch FileZilla or FileZilla Pro. Select the connection you want to use. Wait until the connection is completed. The transfer queue is used by FileZilla when either uploading or downloading a file. When you select a file for upload or download, FileZilla adds the file to the queue and starts to process it immediately. You can also add files or directories to the queue. Selecting a directory, all its files get added to the queue. You can process the queue later. If you start with an empty queue, files are transferred in the order they are added to the queue. You can change the order files are processed. You can also change the order by changing the priority. Higher priority files are processed first. The order depends on the configuration for simultaneous transfers and if there are transfers for different servers in the queue. You can also set what to do when FileZilla finds an existing file. The default action is configured in the settings. Or you can configure the action in the queue either for a file or for all files in the queue. You can also select which action to do after FileZilla processed the queue. FileZilla saves the queue between sessions. If you close FileZilla and opens it again, the queue entries are still there. You don't even need to reconnect. FileZilla will automatically connect to process the queue. To clean the queue, select Stop and Remove All in the Queue view. In this video, you learned how to use Transfer Queue with FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. In this tutorial, you will learn how to compare directories with FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. While we use FTP, the instructions also work with all the other supported protocols. To learn how to configure connections with other protocols, watch the other tutorials you find in the video description. Launch FileZilla or FileZilla Pro. Select the connection you want to use. Wait until the connection is completed. Open your local directory. Then open the remote directory. Now you can enable the directory comparison. By default, FileZilla and FileZilla Pro shows differences based on the last modified column. In green, you see the last modified files, that is, the most recent files. In yellow, you see files that exist only on one side. You can also change the type of comparison to be based on the file size. In this type of comparison, the files with different sizes are shown in red. With synchronized browsing, you can easily compare subdirectories on both sides. When you visit a directory on one side, FileZilla automatically visits the directory with the same name in the other side. In this video, you learned how to compare directories using FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. In this tutorial, you will learn how to use directory filters with FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. While we use FTP, the instructions also work with all the other supported protocols. To learn how to configure connections with other protocols, watch the other tutorials you find in the video description. Launch FileZilla or FileZilla Pro. Select the connection you want to use. Wait until the connection is completed. Directory filters help you focus on the files that are important to you. FileZilla comes with a set of easy-to-use predefined filters. We'll show you how to define a new one. First, click the Edit Filter Rules button. Click New to create a new empty filter. Give a name to the filter. Filter settings tell how the filter will be applied to the directory and file list. Here you define which column is affected by the condition: file name, size, attribute, path, or date. You can set different conditions depending on the column you choose. We will apply the condition to the file name. We want to hide file names that begin with a given string. The string of text is the tilde, typically the first character of the Microsoft Office temporary files. Since we are interested in applying the filter to files only, we unselect directories. The new filter is now available both for local and remote lists. To use the filter, just check it and click Apply. Notice that temporary files have disappeared, but they are not gone. They are still there. Now look at the list status bar. You can see the number of files and directories, the total size, and the number of entries that were filtered out. Clear the filter selection, and all files will be listed again. Let's now filter the remote side. You can also save the filter selection as a new filter set to use it later. In this video, you learned how to use directory filters with FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. In this video, we'll teach you how to use tabbed browsing with FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. In this tutorial, you will learn how to use tabs with FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. While we use FTP, the instructions also work with all the other supported protocols. To learn how to configure connections with other protocols, watch the other tutorials you find in the video description. Launch FileZilla or FileZilla Pro. With tab browsing, you can have multiple connections at the same time. To add a tab, choose File, New Tab, or press Ctrl-T. A new empty tab is created. Your existing connection is still active in the old tab. In the new tab, you can open a new connection. Each tab is independent and can show different local files. You can configure FileZilla or FileZilla Pro to restore the tabs and reconnect on startup. With this option enabled, FileZilla or FileZilla Pro will reopen the tabs and establish all connections. You can also configure FileZilla or FileZilla Pro to create always a new tab when opening a new connection. In this video, you learned how to use tabbed browsing with FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. In this video, we'll teach you how to edit remote files with FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. In this tutorial, you will learn how to edit your remote files with FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. While we use S3, the instructions work also with all the other supported protocols. To learn how to configure connections with other protocols, watch the other tutorials you find in the video description. Launch FileZilla or FileZilla Pro. From FileZilla or FileZilla Pro, you can edit your remote files. To edit the file, right-click it and choose View Edit. FileZilla copies the file to a temporary local file. The default editor for that type of file is launched. For example, in this case, Notepad opens the temporary local file. FileZilla detects if the local copy has changed and asks you if you want to copy the edited copy back on the server. If you don't want to continue editing, select this option. The temporary local file will be deleted. Choose Yes to replace the file on the server. There is no way to detect if the local file is still open by the editor. With this option, you see the files FileZilla tracks as currently being edited and can choose to stop tracking the file or replace the file on the server with the edited local file and keep tracking the file, or to stop tracking the local edited file and upload it on the server as it is, or to reopen the file. To change the file editing behavior, see the file editing options. By default, FileZilla uses the editor associated with the file's file type. You can use the operating system associations and also customize associations. To customize an association, enter the file extension followed by the full path of the program to be used to open the file. Now the file will be opened by the configured program. If there are no editors associated with a given file type, the default editor for that type of file is used. You can always configure a custom editor. In this video, you learned how to edit your remote files with FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. In this video, we'll teach you how to use FileZilla Bookmarks with FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. Bookmarks are used to remember local and remote paths over sessions. In this tutorial, you will learn how to use bookmarks with FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. While we use FTP, the instructions also work with all the other supported protocols. To learn how to configure connections with other protocols, watch the other tutorials you find in the video description. Launch FileZilla or FileZilla Pro. To create a new bookmark, choose Add Bookmark Entry from Bookmarks menu. Global bookmarks can be applied to any connection. Global bookmarks are recommended to connect to remote servers with the same directory structure, or just to access specific local directories. Site-specific bookmarks can be applied only to the connection they were created for. Choose the local directory that will be bookmarked. Then enter the corresponding remote directory. You don't need to fill both directories. FileZilla will change to the directory configured and left the other one unchanged. You can enable synchronized browsing and directory comparison. For details on those, visit Directory Comparison Video. You find the link in the video description. Now you can choose the bookmark and FileZilla will automatically change both the local and remote directories. The site-specific bookmarks are also available from the Site Manager. You can also connect from the bookmark and FileZilla will connect to the site and change to the directories. From the Bookmarks Manager, you can modify existing bookmarks, create new ones, rename them, delete them, or create copies of existing bookmarks. In this video, we'll teach you how to change the user interface settings of FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. In this tutorial, you will learn how to change the user interface settings of FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. Launch FileZilla or FileZilla Pro. The layout setting allows you to change to position of the both local and remote folders and files lists. The classic layout is the default FileZilla layout. Directories at the top, files at the bottom, local directories and files on the left side, and remote directories and files on the right side. With the Explorer layout, the directory trees are positioned to the left of the file lists, just like in Windows Explorer. The widescreen layout puts directories and files, both local and remote, in the same row. The Blackboard layout is similar to the widescreen layout, but the local directory tree stays on the left side and the remote directory tree stays on the right side. Both file lists stay in the middle. The message log position option changes the position of the message log. The default option is to show it above files and directories lists. It can be moved next to the transfer queue. Or it can be a tab in the queue panel. By selecting the Minimize to Tray option, when minimized, FileZilla is located in the system tray. Use the Startup configuration to define how FileZilla starts, either normally, or showing the Site Manager, or restoring the tabs and reconnecting. The next option defines what happens when starting a connection while already connected to that. With the default option, Ask for Action, FileZilla asks if the new connection has to be opened in a new tab, or if the current connection needs to be closed and the new connection has to be opened in the same tab. With the Select Connect option, the new connection is opened in a new tab. In this case, the new connection is opened in the current tab, and the existing connection gets closed. The transfer queue speed shows the average speed. By selecting the Focus Display Momentary option, will show the current transfer speed. These options change the way dates and times are shown across FileZilla. With the System Default option, FileZilla uses the format for the current configured language. This option sets the format as the ISO standard format. Or you can configure a custom format. For a list of options, visit the Date and Time Formatting wiki page. You'll find the link in the video description. The selected format is applied to both local and remote views. You can also configure how FileZilla shows the file size information. This option shows the file size in bytes. The thousands separator makes it easier to read large file sizes. You can use any of the 3 available options for size prefixes to make it easier to read large file sizes. With the prefix options, you can set the number of digits to be displayed. In this video, you learned how to change the user interface settings of FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. In this video, we'll teach you how to enable logging with FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. In this tutorial, you will learn how to enable logging with FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. While we use S3, the instructions work also with all the other supported protocols. To learn how to configure connections with other protocols, watch the other tutorials you find in the video description. Launch FileZilla or FileZilla Pro. In the message view, FileZilla shows the events of the connection. To see more details, choose the Show Detailed Log option. The log can help you identify and correct problems in your connection. You can copy the contents of the message view to the clipboard. Please note that it is limited to a finite number of lines. However, for a large volume of events, you may want to save them to a file. Open FileZilla Settings. Choose Logging. With this option, FileZilla adds a timestamp to all events. Check this option to save the events to a file. Choose where the log file will be stored. You have to choose a directory where you have the permissions to save, otherwise a warning message is shown. You may want to limit the size of the file to prevent the file increase indefinitely. When the file reaches the size, a new log file is created and the old one is renamed. You can also increase the level of details shown in the message view and in the log file. Keep in mind that increasing the level also increases the amount of logged information and affects the performance. Increase the level only if requested. In this video, you learned how to enable logging with FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. In this video, we'll teach you how to connect to a running Amazon EC2 instance with FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. In this tutorial, you will learn how to connect to an Amazon EC2 instance with FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. To connect to your Amazon EC2 instance, you need its IP address or DNS name and the key pair file created when the Amazon instance was initially set up. Launch FileZilla or FileZilla Pro. Click New in the Site Manager dialog box to create a new connection. Select SFTP-SSH File Transfer Protocol as the protocol. Enter the IP address or the host name of the EC2 instance. Select Key File as the logon type. Now enter the EC2 instance user. Use the Amazon instance key pair file to log in. If everything is correct now, you can connect to the EC2 instance. Click OK to accept the host. In the right side, you see your directories and files. In this video, you learned how to connect to an Amazon EC2 instance with FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. In this tutorial, you will learn how to configure FileZilla Pro to connect to Amazon S3 Cloud Service or any other S3 compatible service. Before start, make sure you have a S3 key pair. You will need both the access key ID and the secret access key in order to continue. You can get them from the S3 Console website. Just click on the link to S3 Console website you find in the video description. Now we can continue. First of all, you need to create a site entry for your S3 connection. Click New in the Site Manager dialog box to create a new connection. Select S3 Amazon Simple Storage Service as the protocol. Automatically, FileZilla Pro fills the host name. Choose Normal as the logon type. Enter your access key ID and secret access key in the text boxes. If everything is correct, you can now connect to your S3 storage. In the right side, you see your buckets, directories, and files. In this video, we'll teach you how to connect to S3-compatible cloud environments. In this tutorial, you will learn how to configure FileZilla Pro to connect to non-Amazon S3 storage providers like DreamObjects or DigitalOcean, which we will show you here as a sample configuration. In the video description, you will find a link to a wiki page with the DigitalOcean instructions. Ask your provider for the endpoints and regions. You will need them to configure FileZilla Pro. You need also your access and secret keys. Launch FileZilla Pro. Open the S3 provider's configuration. FileZilla Pro already has the configuration to connect to the Amazon S3 provider. For non-Amazon providers, you need to add the provider configuration. In order to add a new provider configuration, click the Add button. Name the provider as you wish. In the region list, you enter the regions as supplied by your provider. Choose Add to enter a new region. Enter the name of the region. Double-click the description and enter it. Double-click the endpoint and enter it. Perform the same steps for the other regions. Catch-all entry is used to handle regions not yet known. Note that this entry starts with a dot. The format entry is used to build the endpoint for unknown regions. The placeholders bucket and region are used to replace the respective bucket and region values. Now you can create a site to connect to your provider. Create the site and choose Protocol S3. Modify the host to your provider hostname. Enter the access and secret keys. If everything is correct, you can now connect to your provider. In the right view, you will see your buckets, directories, and files. In this tutorial, you learned how to configure FileZilla Pro to connect to non-Amazon S3 storage providers like DreamObjects or DigitalOcean. In this video, we'll teach you how to configure Amazon S3 Server Side Encryption with FileZilla Pro. In this tutorial, you will learn how to set up Amazon S3 Server Side Encryption with FileZilla Pro. Launch FileZilla Pro. With FileZilla Pro, you can configure how Amazon protects your files at rest. To set the encryption type for a file, choose the S3 Server Side Encryption option. By default, files are not encrypted on the remote side. With the S3 encryption type, Amazon manages the encryption keys used to encrypt the file. This option allows you to protect your file with the keys from the Amazon Key Management Service. You can either use your default key or enter a custom key. You can manage the keys in the Key Management Service console. See the link in this video description. You can also set the encryption type for the whole connection. In this case, the encryption type is automatically set when uploading the files. The options are similar to the ones used for a single file. Use S3 encryption for S3 managed keys and KMS for keys from the Key Management Service. The link in the description explains the different options. It is also possible to set your own encryption key. Use this option when you want to manage the encryption key yourself. The custom key is used to encrypt the file when uploading and to decrypt when downloading. Keep in mind that if you lose or forget the encryption key, you will not be able to recover your files. For details about the encryption types, visit the page Protecting Data Using Server Side Encryption. See the link in this video description. In this video, you learned how to use Amazon S3 Server Side Encryption with FileZilla Pro. In this video, we'll teach you how to manage S3 Lifecycle Policies Management with FileZilla Pro. In this video, you will learn how to manage your S3 buckets lifecycle policies with FileZilla Pro. Launch FileZilla Pro. Connect to your S3 site. On the right, you see the list of your buckets. Right-click or Control-click if you are on a Mac to open the context menu and choose the S3 bucket lifecycle policies. The configuration is shown. On top, you see the list of rules. If the bucket has no policy rules, you can set a default rule that cleans incomplete multi-part uploads after 7 days. To create a new rule, press Add. Give the rule a name. Enable the rule to run it automatically. You can limit the scope of the rule. By setting the prefix, you can limit the rule to objects starting with that prefix. For example, objects under the Images subdirectory. You can also limit the rule to objects with specific tags. The rule will be applied only to the objects that match tag name and value. Then you have to select the actions that will be performed to those objects. You can add different actions to the rule. For example, move the objects to another storage, or delete the objects. These actions are applied to the current version of the objects. There are corresponding actions for previous versions of the objects if the objects are versioned. You can also add the action to remove incomplete uploads. After selecting an action, you have to specify its parameters. Parameters differ for each type of action. Date determines when the action will take place. Days specifies how many days after object creation the action will take place. You can set either one or the other. The storage indicates which storage class the object will be moved to. For a list of S3 storage classes, see the link in the description. You can add as many actions as you want to the same set of objects, provided that you don't try to set the same action twice. Clicking OK will validate the rules and add them to the S3 bucket. In this video, you learned how to manage your S3 buckets lifecycle policies with FileZilla Pro. In this tutorial, you will learn how to configure FileZilla Pro to connect to Microsoft Azure Cloud Storage services. FileZilla Pro has support to both file and blob Azure storage types. Before start, please make sure you have an access key. You will need it in order to continue. You can get it from the Microsoft Azure Dashboard Portal website. Just click on the link to the dashboard website you find in the video description. Now we can continue. First, you need to create a site entry for your Azure connection. Click New in the Site Manager dialog box to create a new connection. Select Microsoft Azure File Storage Service as the protocol. Automatically, FileZilla Pro fills the host name. If you want to connect to your blob service, you could select Azure Blob Storage Service as the protocol. Choose Normal as the logon type. Enter your storage account ID and access key in the text boxes. If everything is correct, you can now connect to your Azure file storage. In the right side, you see your shares, directories, and files. In this tutorial, you will learn how to configure FileZilla Pro to connect to Google Cloud Storage Service. Before start, please make sure you have the ID of the project you want to access. You will need it together with your Google user and password in order to continue. You can get the project ID from the Google Cloud Resource Manager website. Just click on the link to the Resource Manager website you find in the video description. Now we can continue. First of all, you need to create a site entry for your Google Cloud connection. Click New in the Site Manager dialog box to create a new connection. Select Google Cloud Storage as the protocol. Automatically, FileZilla Pro fills the host name. Enter your project ID and your account email address in the text boxes. If everything is correct, you can now connect to your Google Cloud Storage. At this point, you will be redirected to Google to authorize FileZilla Pro to access your storage. Enter your Google credentials to continue. Now, authorizes FileZilla Pro to access your storage. If everything is correct, the connection continues without problems. You can close the browser window at this point. In the right side, you see your buckets, directories, and files. In this tutorial, you will learn how to configure FileZilla Pro to connect to Google Drive. Launch FileZilla Pro. First of all, you need to create a site entry for your Google Drive connection. Click New in the Site Manager dialog box to create a new connection. Select Google Drive as the protocol. Automatically, FileZilla Pro fills the host name. Enter your account email address in the text boxes. If everything is correct, you can now connect to your Google Drive. You will be redirected to Google to authorize FileZilla Pro to access your Google storage. Enter your Google credentials to continue. Now authorize FileZilla Pro to access Google Drive. If everything is correct, the connection continues without problems. You can close the browser window at this point. In the right side, you see your own files and directories under the My Drive folder. Also, files and directories others shared with you under the Shared With Me folder. And finally, under Team Drives folder, you see the G Suite team drives your Google account belongs to. If you have the administrative rights, you will be able to add or remove team drives by creating or deleting directories under Team Drives folder. In this video, you learned how to connect to Google Drive with FileZilla Pro. In this tutorial, you will learn how to configure FileZilla Pro to connect to Dropbox. Launch FileZilla Pro. Start creating a site entry for your Dropbox connection. Click New in the Site Manager dialog box to create a new connection. Select Dropbox as the protocol. You will be redirected to Dropbox to authorize FileZilla Pro to access your Dropbox storage. Enter your Dropbox credentials to continue. Now, authorize FileZilla Pro to access Dropbox. If everything is correct, FileZilla Pro will connect. Now you can close the browser window. In the right side, you see your files and directories. In this video, you learned how to connect to Dropbox with FileZilla Pro. In this tutorial, you will learn how to configure FileZilla Pro to connect to Microsoft OneDrive. Launch FileZilla Pro. Start creating a site entry for your OneDrive connection. Click New in the Site Manager dialog box to create a new connection. Select Microsoft OneDrive as the protocol. Automatically, FileZilla Pro fills the host name. You will be redirected to the Microsoft website to authorize FileZilla Pro to access your OneDrive storage. Enter your Microsoft credentials to continue. And authorize the access request. The authentication window closes automatically. On Mac OS, a browser window opens automatically and you need to authorize the access. Then you have to copy and paste the authentication code you get in the browser. If everything is correct, FileZilla Pro will connect. In the right side, you see your files and directories. In this video, you learned how to connect to Microsoft OneDrive with FileZilla Pro. In this video, we'll teach you how to share your files on the cloud using temporary links with FileZilla Pro. In this video, you will learn how to create a temporary URL with FileZilla Pro. While we use S3, the instructions also work with Microsoft Azure File and Blob and Dropbox protocols. To learn how to configure connections with other protocols, watch the other tutorials you find in the video description. Launch FileZilla Pro. From FileZilla Pro, you can obtain a temporary URL for your files stored in the cloud service. To create the temporary URL, right-click the file and choose Temporary URL. In the Temporary URL dialog box, you see the URL for the selected file. In the S3 and Azure storage protocols, the URL lasts for 24 hours. For the Dropbox, the URL expires after 4 hours. You can click the Copy to Clipboard button to copy the URL to the clipboard. You can share this URL to others, or open it in a browser. In this video, you learned how to create a temporary URL with FileZilla Pro. In this video, we'll teach you how to keep your authentication tokens safe with FileZilla Pro. In this tutorial, you will learn how to securely store authentication tokens with FileZilla Pro. While we use OneDrive, the instructions work also with Dropbox, Google Drive, and Google Cloud protocols. To learn how to configure connections with other protocols, watch the other tutorials you find in the video description. Launch FileZilla or FileZilla Pro. In order to grant access to data, Google Cloud, Google Drive, Dropbox, and Microsoft OneDrive require an authorization step, which creates an authentication token. Click Connect. This step creates an authentication token that lasts until FileZilla Pro gets closed. Once you quit FileZilla Pro, all authentication tokens are discarded, and you'll need to authorize protocols again at the next run. To preserve authorizations between sessions, you need to use a master password. FileZilla Pro now stores authentication tokens. And at the next run, you just need to enter the master password. By selecting this option, FileZilla Pro will prompt you for the master password just once per session. If you don't want to use a stored authentication token, you can instruct FileZilla Pro to forget it. Enter the master password and you see that FileZilla connected without the authorization step. In this video, you learned how to store the authentication tokens with FileZilla Pro. In this video, we'll teach you how to connect to Backblaze B2 Cloud Storage with FileZilla Pro. In this tutorial, you will learn how to connect to Backblaze B2 Cloud Storage with FileZilla Pro. Before start, make sure you have our account ID and master application key. You can find them in the Backblaze B2 Cloud Storage Buckets page. You find the link in the video description. Launch FileZilla Pro. Start creating a site entry for your Backblaze connection. Click New in the Site Manager dialog box to create a new connection. Select Backblaze B2 as the protocol. Automatically, FileZilla Pro fills the host name. In the Account ID box, enter your account ID. In the application key, enter your master application key. If everything is correct, FileZilla Pro will connect to your B2 Cloud Storage. On the right side, you see your buckets and files. In this video, you learned how to connect to Backblaze B2 with FileZilla Pro. In this video, we'll teach you how to connect to WebDAV. In this tutorial, you will learn how to connect to a WebDAV storage with FileZilla Pro. Before start, make sure you have the WebDAV hostname, username, and password. Contact your provider to obtain this information. Launch FileZilla or FileZilla Pro. First of all, you need to create a site entry for your WebDAV connection. Click New in the Site Manager dialog box to create a new connection. Select WebDAV as the protocol. Enter the host as supplied by your provider. Also, add your username and password in the respective text boxes. If everything is correct, you can now connect to your WebDAV storage. In the right side, you see your directories and files. In this video, you learned how to connect to an OpenStack storage with FileZilla Pro. In this video, you learned how to connect to WebDAV with FileZilla Pro. In this video, we'll teach you how to connect to OpenStack Swift. You will learn how to configure FileZilla Pro to connect to an OpenStack cloud service. Before start, make sure you have the ID of the project, the identity host, and its path. Contact your cloud service provider to obtain these information. Now we can continue. First of all, you need to create a site entry for your OpenStack connection. Click New in the Site Manager dialog box to create a new connection. Select OpenStack Swift as the protocol. Enter the identity host and path and project ID as supplied by your cloud provider. Also add your account email address and password in the text boxes. If everything is correct, you can now connect to your OpenStack storage. In the right side, you see your buckets, directories, and files. In this video, you learned how to connect to an OpenStack storage with FileZilla Pro. In this video, you learned how to use FileZilla Pro. FileZilla Pro is fast and reliable. Plus, it supports a variety of other cloud protocols: Amazon S3, Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud Storage, Google Drive, Dropbox, Microsoft OneDrive, Amazon EC2, Backblaze B2, and WebDAV. Are your website files ready to go? Time to get your copy of FileZilla Pro. Go to FileZillaPro.com and buy it with confidence. See you at the next video of the FileZilla Pro series.